Welcome to the show, folks. We're live today. Today's guest is somebody that I've had on before, and it's a total pleasure of mine to have her on again. We're going to be doing things a little bit differently today. So I'm going to give you an opportunity to settle in, pull out your notebooks and your notepads if you have to, because today is going to be a bit of a learning session where you're going to get an introduction to the enterprise sales processes that exist in many organizations out there. Now, before I get into all of that, I am going to share a couple of things about our guest today. Okay, so you've already seen the headlines, you've seen our poster, you already know who the guest is. I think that Vanessa may be the first business analyst in history who has officially hit influencer status because of a lot of the materials that some of the materials you'll see today. But if you follow her on LinkedIn, you'll know exactly what I mean. All right. And so we have her LinkedIn profile that we're going to be sharing as we go through here. And you need to make sure you connect with Vanessa. I'm going to share with you one other thing before we get started off here, because I'm going to hide business analyst in history to become an influencer. But even more than that, I want to actually point out a couple of things in her LinkedIn profile that I think are massive accomplishments that can kind of fly under the radar if it's just there and nobody's really pointing it out. Number one here, if you go onto her profile, is that you see that she has an MBA from NYU Stern. And I don't know how many folks out there understand the landscape of MBA programs, but NYU Stern School of Business is not an easy program to get into, and it's definitely not an easy program to graduate from. And this on its own should be, I mean, it's such a huge accomplishment on its own. And it should kind of give you an understanding as to why I like to have seasoned professionals like Vanessa on, is that, folks, we're not just marketers here trying to sell you something. We're here to actually teach you, and having seasoned professionals like Vanessa is part of that goal. All right, folks. So that's just one thing. But if you connect with her on LinkedIn, you'll see so many other accomplishments that go well above and beyond what I think I could talk about. I could spend an hour on her profile and explain it all to you. But let's park all of that aside and let's welcome Vanessa to the show. Vanessa, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us today.
What an intro, my goodness.
Hey, I think I've done you a disservice by cutting it that short. And so maybe in the next one, I'll go through your profile and highlight a couple of other things. I think your accomplishments more than speak for themselves. And I love having you on the show. So welcome.
Thank you. Love being here. I've love our chats, and I will say, our interview from BA Blocks on YouTube is still one of my favorite that I've ever done.
Yeah, I love that interview too. I have so much fun in all of these sessions, but I think that one especially, I learned so much from that session itself, and I'm hoping that I'm going to learn a lot more here today. For the folks that are tuning in, what we've promised for you today is this, right? We've essentially said what we're going to be doing today is exactly that. And it's going to be a bit of a workshop style conversation that we're going to be having, because I have my Visio file ready on the side here. And what I'm going to be doing is kind of taking notes on the side and kind of starting to build up a bit of a visual. I'm a bit of a visual thinker, so I'm going to be building up a bit of a visual to kind of help everybody understand this domain a little bit better. So Put your comments and questions in the chat. We're 5 minutes in. At around the 35-minute mark, we'll start taking some questions from the chat. But between now and then, I think we're just going to dive right in, Vanessa. Before we actually get into the subject matter, I'm going to take another quick little pause and maybe just have you kind of get us caught up on what you've been up to since the last time we talked a couple of years ago.
I feel like I spoke to you kind of like at the beginning of my momentum starting. But since we've chatted, I've become a Dreamforce speaker. I kind of did the Salesforce community circuit domestically.
Yeah.
This summer, I'm actually going to do my first speaking session internationally at London's Calling, which I'm really excited about.
Wow.
I've written a couple of blog posts for Salesforce Ben. I did one for the Salesforce admin blog, and really just doing my best to kind of evangelize best practices for Salesforce business analysts is really just kind of like become my mission.
That is awesome. And I bet every one of those bullet points are something we could expand on. I mean, we're going to have you back, obviously, for a future session to catch up on all of this stuff. But you know what? Let's give the folks what we promised them. Thank you for that great introduction. And folks, again, at the end of the session, I'm going to be showing you where you're going to be able to connect with Vanessa directly. But let's dive right in. All right. So one of the things that I think is really important for business analysts is to make sure that they have a bit of a footing in the domain knowledge that they need to be able to support their customers better. And domain knowledge is, I would say, is probably one of the pillars that business analysts should focus on if they want to really get good at what they're doing, because you can build up business analysis skills on their own, but without really understanding your customer's world, you're limited in the amount of help you can actually provide for them. And so this is one domain that I think is incredibly popular. I think we should dive right in by just doing a quick overview of sales. What is sales? I'm wondering if you can maybe just quickly walk us through sales processes at a very high level.
At a very high level, what you're looking at is the point from interest. So your lead. So either you've got a salesperson who is finding a lead, or somebody reaches out to the customer. Mm-hmm. Then they will get converted. So if there actually is opportunity, they have the budget, they have the resources. Okay, we're moving on. Now we've got opportunity management. Yep. We've got also moving into okay, how is the opportunity progressing? Are they ready to look at a contract? Have we done a presentation for them? Mm-hmm. Then it's moving on to we've got the account and contact management. So if they've converted into an account, yeah. So we start collecting, all right, who are the decision makers? Who are the key people we need to speak to over the course of this opportunity? Yeah. And the account management could happen before, it could happen post. It really depends on how people set up their systems. But then you've got the forecasting, because you want to be able to understand, how am I doing this quarter? Are we pacing correctly? Who's slagging on the sales team? Who's our superstar? Are we making sure that we're keeping track of all of our major deals? There's pricing and quoting involves, and approval processes that might be involved if there's anything kind of out of the ordinary or custom that would take place as part of that process. And then you've got your sales. So you want to, of course, keep in mind your analytics. So are you hitting your KPIs, your key performance indicators? Are you making sure that you have the systems in place so that that you're on top of everything? And then after a sale, there are also other systems involved. So do you want your system to connect to SAP? So where you've got your integrations in your App Exchange products, that's kind of more of, I'd say, the layer that's kind of on top of the whole thing. But certainly post-sale, there's the account management aspect of it. And salespeople are very involved in that as well, because you always want to either upsell or renew or however it might go.
Very, very great intro. I think so at a very high level, these would be like the general big boxes of sales processes and activities that can exist within a company. Now, I think there's one or two different ways we can go with this. Here's what I'm going to recommend, because I think it's important to understand these sales processes at a couple of different levels, right? First, what I'm going to do is I'm going to rearrange these boxes a little bit, okay? And again, folks, this is kind of like a workshop session where we're doing this live. I'm going to rearrange these boxes a little bit here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a box around all of these, and I'm essentially going to call this could essentially, in for lack of better terms, be referred to, all of these activities could be referred to as revenue operations, right?
Well, revenue operations, I think, also encompasses more of the marketing and the service side. So it's actually more of a strategic umbrella. So when you're thinking revenue operations, you want to think of what are the strategies and tools that I need in order to achieve my business goals, where I would say as business analysts, and especially as a Salesforce business analyst, I'm more focused on how can I optimally set up your system to get you there.
I see. Okay. So what I heard there was that it has more of the marketing and customer support or client support, for lack of a better word. If we were to add those two boxes in, we've gotten probably one step closer to revenue operations. Is that a fair statement?
I would say that's a fair statement, because I think without somebody being responsible for the RevOps portion, you're basically, and you see it at so many companies where marketing kind of exists in a silo, customer service lives in a silo, and then sales lives in a silo. And so to have somebody to really have the strategic vision to unite all of those under the same goals, and then to put the tools in place so that they can speak to each other seamlessly, that's a whole position in and of itself. So when you see a RevOps role, that is what it should be.
I see. So if I was to really try to understand the concept of RevOps, would it be fair for me to characterize it as follows? Traditionally, most companies have had a marketing division or department, a sales division and department, and then kind of like a client management, customer management division or department. And traditionally, these three functions inside of an organization have been really kind of separate departments. Would it be fair to say that revenue operations does for sales what DevOps does for maybe system delivery? Because the whole purpose of DevOps is to try to bring development and infrastructure under the same umbrella to get them to work a little bit better.
I think that's fair. I think that's actually a really interesting comparison, and I like it.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. So I think, so summarize this piece. And again, folks, I'm learning here along with you, okay? Because this is not my area of expertise. So this selfishly, I'm trying to learn about this domain myself, and Vanessa's has volunteered her time to help. So RevOps is really trying to bring marketing, sales, and client management all under the same umbrella, because really, if you think about it, inside of any company, those three functions really are kind of doing different activities to try to achieve the same goal, which is to bring in clients and to manage clients, essentially.
Yep.
And clients are what bring in revenue, and that's how revenue operations make sense. Now, if I was to kind of bring things up a level and look at a larger enterprise at a much higher level than even this, here's what I would do, okay? I would say that that's where revenue comes in. There is usually some sort of a product, something related to product development, I'm going to say. Let's fix this, product development. Something related to the product development and delivery, okay? And this may be product, this may be services, it may be whatever it is that the company is essentially trying to sell, okay? There would be these two different organizations that kind of exist, and under here there would be a bunch of other departments potentially, all of who do different functions. We'll maybe possibly get into that in another workshop. Now, these folks do sales and marketing. These folks actually build and deliver the products that these folks have essentially sold, for lack of a better way of saying it. Now, there's a ton of value there, but an organization also needs to have a lot of support services. For example, human resources, right? That may be a whole division inside of a large company. HR is a major division inside of most companies. Every company has to have an HR division. There is oftentimes finance. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually bring finance a little bit closer to this group here, because there's probably some integration happening between sales systems and finance systems. Okay. So there's human resources, there's finance, and I've spent finance wrong. Let's fix that. And there's a lot of other divisions out here like IT. There are divisions sometimes for facilities and
I'm
groundskeeping.
gonna throw legal in there.
Yeah, legal is
That-
definitely in here. Yep, that's right. And so if you put, I'm going to put legal right here. And if you look at any company, essentially any company in the world has to have these basic functions, regardless of whether it is a small startup company or whether it's a gigantic global multinational company that serves many different companies. The basic functions that a company have to perform are more or less the same. Fair?
Fair.
Yeah. Okay. Typically, you have, we won't get too high up, but you usually have a board and you usually have a CEO that sits somewhere right here. We'll leave those folks alone for the time being. And usually, the CEO likes to have legal nice and close. But let's go back to revenue operations. And part of the reason why I wanted to do this is to kind of illustrate the fact that revenue operations, sales, marketing, it's a function just like any other function that exists inside of a company. And if you look at it contextually, this is kind of where it fits into the overall big picture view or the big puzzle of an organization. Let's do this. Let's see.
I'm just gonna say real quick. I think it really, as business evolves, we are seeing different businesses at different stages of this evolution. Not every business is going to have a rev ops team. They might just not be there yet. Maybe not every, maybe there are still businesses that are still, everybody's got to start somewhere. Everybody starts with a spreadsheet and then evolves it into, a system. And then they go, oh, this isn't going to work anymore. We need integrations. So all of a sudden it's an enterprise system. And so with the evolution of businesses, where you start seeing how do other businesses do this well? And how do I incorporate these best practices into my organization?
Yeah. And size, I think number of employees is probably one of the biggest determining factors in how you structure your organization. So for example, let's say we have a small startup. They have all of these different functions, but there may be really one person who leads this entire function, including all of these things, and they may have 2 employees reporting into them. And that 3-person team might run marketing and the entire sales process and manage the clients, right?
Yes. No, I mean, it's the difference between can you scream down the hallway when you need something versus do you need a system to actually make sure that all the different teams are coordinated?
Yeah. So a company like that, for example, they might manage all of the data that's related to all of these functions in a spreadsheet. One spreadsheet that might be on a Google Drive somewhere, and all 4 people are in it day in and day out. And for a company like that, a spreadsheet is probably enough for them to be able to manage that business.
Until somebody sorts it wrong.
Yes, or somebody sorts it wrong, or somebody hits delete by accident, or something happens, and now you've run into some of the risks that enterprise systems help you to mitigate, right?
Yes.
Spreadsheets will take you only so far, but there are reasons why systems like Salesforce exist. And it's one of these questions that oftentimes a lot of new analysts that come in, they say, hey, why do we even actually need this system? I can do all of this in Excel. There are legitimate reasons for why you need a system, and we can get into a lot of those types of conversations. I'm going to park that for now because I think we could probably explore that in a future talk. I think let's take this scenario of the startup that we have, right? So we have 3 people. 5 years later, that team, let's say, has grown to 20 people because their business has grown. They need more people to manage the marketing side of things and the sales side of things and the client management side of things. In 10 years, this company might have had exponential growth and grown across a lot of different countries, a lot of different jurisdictions. Now their sales team is in the hundreds, right? That teams can grow that way. And once you grow into a sales team of hundreds of people, and there are many companies in the world that have thousands of people in their sales teams, forget about 100, but if you have a sales team of hundreds of people, you hit that type of a scale, spread things like spreadsheets and using Microsoft Access as a database, things like that start to kind of fall short of being able to do things. They get totally unwieldy. Is there, let me ask you this, and you might not have an answer to this question. That's fine. We can come back to it at another time. But you having worked in Salesforce, is there a team size that would indicate to you that they're ready for Salesforce?
Interesting. I think it was less. I think it's not. While team size I think is important, I kind of found that CRMs would, or at least even like a small CRM or some sort of a system was starting to be important right around the 8 to 10 salespeople mark. Right. But I think it also has to do with complexity of the business. So right. If you have a complex business, like let's say your contracts involved, let's say there's credit checks involved, let's say that you sell medical devices, those are the things, or there are other systems that you need to speak to. I think that's where you're going to see the more complex systems coming in a little bit earlier than waiting until they necessarily have 200 salespeople.
I see. So a big factor there isn't necessarily the size of the team, but I mean, how complicated is the sales operations that you're essentially running, right?
Yep.
Sometimes you might be in a heavily regulated environment. Let's say, for example, you're in pharmaceuticals, or if you're in some other area, there may be specific regulations that you have to account for as part of your sales process. And a system like Salesforce could potentially add into that. Even if you're a small 10% pharmaceutical team, a system like Salesforce might be able to help you with that. Is that a fair characterization?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I've worked on Salesforce systems where they needed to be like SOX compliant, and all of a sudden, like you can't make a change to Salesforce without it being documented.
Right.
But they need that type of, or they need to do an integration with DocuSign, but they can't use Conga. They have to use DocuSign because it has, that Part 11 compliance that you wouldn't see on Conga, even though Conga also has just as good a signing system. So there's just there are just different considerations. Just of course, size of the team is going to be one of them. It's going to be, what are you selling? So how many regulations and compliance issues do you have to think about, and how complex is your sales process? And of course, when you think about the complexity, is like, does it have to stay this complex? Because certainly I've walked into businesses where I'm like, maybe we should talk about these processes before we bring the technology into it.
Right. Okay. So small, medium, large businesses, all three of them may sometimes have to rely on a system like Salesforce to help them actually run their sales operations. And again, folks, for any company that has to function, even if it's a 5% company, the understanding really, the fact that they have to do some sort of marketing activities, they have to do activities for lead generation and managing what are called leads in the sales domain. I'm going to go into sales pipeline and forecasting, or actually it would go, I'm going to try to map it out a little bit more cleanly in terms of process. So you generate a lead, manage an opportunity. You would probably go take that lead, that sales lead, which is essentially a sales opportunity, do possibly some sort of quoting, possibly some sort of contract management, and then possibly, I would say that, let me see, I'm gonna rearrange this a little bit. You can let me know if you think that this makes sense, okay? If I was to start drawing a couple of arrows from top to bottom here, just to kind of talk about how a sales lead might possibly just kind of flow through the process here. Let's see if this matches up, if I'm doing this in a way that makes sense. Let's imagine that this company sells consumer goods. Let's say they sell, I'm going to just say shoes, running shoes. Okay. Could be a company like Nike or Adidas, right? There's a certain amount of marketing that a company like that has to do. But essentially, a company like that would, their customers, even though you think you may be the customer that actually buys shoes, their lead generation opportunities really at an enterprise level wouldn't necessarily be me and you as customers, but it may be the suppliers that sells their products. Now, in many enterprise organizations that have that kind of a structure, would it be, let's, again, we'll take Adidas for an example. What could be an example of a lead that they enter into their system as a shoe manufacturer?
So if you're a shoe manufacturer, I think your leads would be more along the lines of, like you were saying, when you've got an intermediary, like a distributor that is interested in being in distributing your particular good.
Right.
So they would either reach out through your website, or you have maybe a sales team that's going around and saying, "Hey, are you interested in putting our shoes on your shelves?"
Right.
And so that would be the lead. Is okay. Somebody's interested. How we found them. That's part of lead management.
So here's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to put some examples down here, and folks, we're speculating here just for learning purposes, right? And the purpose of this workshop really is to start to give you a sense of how a company kind of functions at a very high level when it comes to sales process. So let's say, for example, we are a shoe manufacturer. I may have Macy's. Is that how you spell Macy's in the States?
Macys.
CYS. Macy's
Yes.
in the US. In Canada here, we would probably have, a huge retailer is the Bay, right? Is one of our major retailers. These folks here would be the lead that they generate, and now it's the shoe manufacturer's job to try to see if they can get Macy's to either purchase their shoes to sell to you, or to get the Bay to put their shoes on the shelf and they can work some sort of an arrangement. Now, a lead like this, let's say you have, yeah, that's a massive lead. So
the hot lead.
Well, let's put, many companies out there try to sell to Walmart. Trying to get Walmart as a customer for your product is a multi-year effort for many companies, right? They may say, hey, look, we have somebody from Walmart who we are going to enter into our system as a lead. It may take us 3 years to actually make a sale to Walmart, or we may not be able to do it at all, and we have to maybe go to another retailer to try to make a sale. But Walmart and Macy's are examples of things like leads, right? Company says, we manufacture shoes. We need to sell these shoes to retailers who are going to sell them to consumers. We're going to enter Macy's and Walmart as a lead. Now let's start to try to work these leads to figure out how we can actually make a sale. And that's what the purpose of a lead essentially is. Leads versus opportunities. I mean, we can get into that conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I would think of it in terms of, so you got to figure out, what are my criteria so that I'm going to convert the lead. So what's a qualified lead? Because anybody can email and say, I'm from Macy's and I want your shoes in my shop, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they have the budget.
Vanessa, are you there?
Hold on, did I freeze? Did you freeze? All right, there we go. So
yeah, we're good.
Yeah, now I'm here. I don't know what's going on. I think
I can
I'm
hear
here.
you now. You're good. Yeah, I can hear you.
Am I here? Okay. So it's figuring out what is the difference between a lead and an account. So when you convert a lead, like in Salesforce, you can convert it into an account, a contact, and an opportunity. So a lead in Salesforce is actually a combination of an account and a contact.
I see.
So what you want to figure out is
convert a lead.
Yeah. Like, so is it, and that's all based on your business. So like it's do I consider them qualified when I find out what their budget is? Do I consider them qualified when I find out that they have enough budget and I've identified a decision maker? And so you as a business figure out what your process is, so you make sure, okay, it does not get converted until X, Y, and Z is found to be true.
Understood. So here I have the concept of a lead. I have the concept of an account, a contact, an opportunity, and I've put in the concept of a qualified lead.
Yeah.
And I think all of these concepts really put the examples to the side here, but all of these concepts I would guess are different types of objects or different variations of the same object somewhere in Salesforce.
Yes, lead, account,
Ah,
contact, opportunity, all objects in Salesforce.
got it. Okay.
Salesforce, I will say, is very good at figuring out kind of like what the lowest common denominator of enterprise sales looks like, and building it that way so you can build it custom from there.
Right. Now let me ask you this. For somebody who would want to learn Salesforce, would they focus on a specific box that we have here, or do you have consultants that work across all of these different areas?
I would say the line tends to be between marketing and lead. So you do have folks that are marketing domain specialists. So they
Okay.
would work in more marketing cloud.
Uh,
Um, and then from lead all the way to closing an opportunity would be sales cloud. So there are folks that focus on sales cloud, and those two systems are very different.
I
So
see.
I have
Okay.
a marketing cloud certification, but I would not put me on a marketing cloud project without a little bit of without a little bit of support.
Right, right, right. Okay, okay. I'm going to document that in a bit of a using a bit of a different color here, because I think what's important for a lot of folks who want to get into Salesforce is to understand what to focus on. And a really good way, I think, to understand that is if we could, let's say, for example, I'm just going to call this job one. And I'll say this is kind of like a Salesforce. It could be essentially a Salesforce job on its own, just to be able to do marketing cloud. You said, right? Is the
Yeah,
product
marketing
name?
cloud. Now,
Okay.
marketing cloud is the more robust one. Now, sales cloud does have the ability to create campaigns and have them funnel leads in sales cloud, but it's not very robust.
Got it.
So
Got it.
if you're serious enterprise, like you're going marketing cloud or some other system to make sure to manage your customer journeys, essentially.
Understand. So that would be like the whatever Sales Cloud has would probably be for companies who don't purchase Marketing Cloud but still need some basic functionality.
Exactly.
Ah, I see. Okay, okay. So Marketing Cloud's really like the powerhouse tool for doing marketing.
Yep.
But you said that the other one was called Sales Cloud, right?
Yes, sales cloud.
I
Exactly.
see. Sales Cloud, I'd imagine. Sales Cloud covers how many of these functions?
I would say pretty much all of them at a basic level.
Oh, okay. So it basically Sales Cloud essentially does, and I'm going to draw this out. Folks, we're going to draw this out in real time, and I'm going to clean it up offline, and I'll show you where you can get this if you need to start learning about Salesforce and kind of understanding Salesforce at a high level like this. But so Sales Cloud, you'd say, covers all of these different things, and this seems like it would kind of integrate a bunch of different pieces together.
Correct.
I'd
And
imagine.
there are also more robust things. So just like marketing cloud is kind of your beefed up marketing, let's say you are working in like manufacturing and you have a bajillion different types of bundles that you can put together, and you have a very complicated pricing structure.
Yeah.
That's where you're going to look at something like CPQ, which is not part of Sales Cloud, but connects with Sales Cloud so that you can have more guided selling experiences for your salespeople. So again, it's the integrations, and it's not App Exchange, it's still Salesforce. CPQ Salesforce is a whole thing. But if you have beefed up pricing, you need that extra bit of robustness, you get CPQ.
I see. CPQ for manufacturing specific, you're saying, right?
It could be manufactured, but I've seen it for like SaaS organizations. It really could be anything. Any sort of anytime you have a more complicated pricing and sales structure.
Okay. Okay. So this is like
Yeah.
it's
Where
essentially
a salesperson can't go in and go, wait, I know exactly how to put this together to put together a good package for this client. It's just if your catalog's huge, if your bundling is complicated, if your pricing's complicated.
wow. Okay, understood. Are we 35 minutes in already?
No,
I
we've
feel like
got
I've
so
only
much.
been here for 5 minutes.
There's a lot to learn. I've been doing this a few years.
CPQ, Deb says, thank you for the comment here. Deb says that CPQ stands for configure price quote. I'm going to actually put that in.
Do it.
You know what? I'm going to take Deb, I'm gonna update this afterwards. Thank you for this. I'm just gonna paste this in right here so that I can remember to do that. And thank you for that. Let's just go to the chat here. I think we have a pretty good outline of what sales functions look like and a kind of a bit of a visual model that hopefully makes sense to beginners. I'm going to go through the comments, and folks, hey, we are live here still. So if you have any comments, put them in the chat. If you have any questions, especially, put them in the chat. We'll try to address them. I'm going to run through here. Looks like some folks might have lost audio a little bit earlier. I'm just going to quickly scan through. Lori says, love Vanessa Grant. She has a lot of experience and is approachable and fun. And hey, massively experienced. I think that, and honestly, folks, I'm going to try to get Vanessa to commit to come on to a future workshop again to help us clarify this picture even more. So I totally agree. I'm with you on that. Vanessa, you have so many fans showing up. Love Vanessa Grant. She's an amazing teacher. So much to share.
You guys, so nice. Thank you.
Yeah, so many great comments. Is there another way to share? Because YouTube video has cut off twice since the live started. We'll have the replay available for you, and hopefully that helps a little bit. I'll make sure that we have a cleaner version of the replay available for the folks if those versions have cut out. We have a comment here that says even nonprofits that start small and need multifunctions. So for sure. Whether you're a corporation that's looking to make profit or nonprofit, this basic business structure here still applies. Nonprofits still need operations. They might not call them revenue operations. They might call them something else, but they still have a bit of a sales function that they have to go through to be able to run their organization. And they have all of these other functions that also exist. We have, let's see, do we have any questions here? Ravi asks, I am a beginner to this domain. Where do we start to learn Salesforce from? Ravi, I would say that you've already started. If you understood what we're talking about here, this is really sales domain 101, and we're starting to layer some more Salesforce concepts onto it. As soon as you understand the big picture of how all of these different pieces work together, your next step would probably be to focus on one of the areas that Salesforce has and learn that in depth.
Yes. And actually, this is a good time to mention Salesforce has a very robust and free learning management system called Trailhead. So if you Google Salesforce Trailhead, start up a free Trailhead account. They have all sorts of paths depending on if you're interested in a sales path, a service path, business analyst path, admin path, and you can kind of figure out which modules you need. There you go.
I just Googled it really quickly as soon as you mentioned it there. And so this is Trailhead. And so you're saying that you can sign up for a free account here and that gives you some more guidance, or does it give you access to the tools?
It actually both. So you can spin up Salesforce sandboxes or to start playing in it if you want to, or you could start going through modules, and the modules actually have exercises where they will make you spin up a playground to complete the module. So it's a really neat, hands-on, kind of gamified learning management system that they have, because they want people to get into Salesforce, because we need professionals that know what they're doing. So support all these businesses.
Absolutely. So Ravi, I think you have your answer there. And sorry, I think I lost my window where I can see you. And let me just try to find that really quickly before we have a live. Let me see. Let's close that. Let's close this. Live hiccups in workshops here. Let me just make sure that I have gotten that fixed. I may have to stop sharing.
As long as we're still charming on audio, that's the only thing that's important here.
The audio is still coming through, and I found us here, and I'm going to share my screen one more time, and we'll continue to go through some of the comments that we have here. All right, folks. So, Ravi, I think you have your answer there, and that's the perfect place for folks to start. We have Christopher who says number 2 Vanessa fan. So it looks like we missed the number 1 Vanessa fan up ahead somewhere. Start from Trailhead. It's fun. Raul says the same thing. This is my first class. Bushra says this is my first class. Am I? Am I on the right track? Hey, if you're saying that this workshop is your first class, then absolutely, because I'm learning about this domain as at the same time as you are, and I think there's no better person that I can think to learn this from than Vanessa. So what do we have here? If you are new to Salesforce, I highly recommend starting with Road to Ranger Trail Mix.
Yeah. So that a trail mix is a collection of modules that you can take on Trailhead.
So it's got a pretty good hiking theme going here
Yes, it is.
with this day. Excellent. I'm a certified Salesforce admin pursuing all things BA and curious if there are any specific clouds that are most aligning with current BA job demand. That's a great question.
I think usually still see BAs, I would say sales, service, CPQ are probably the big ones. Just because those are going to be like a company that has CPQ is going to be a big organization. Like you're not going to see any 5 person organization getting CPQ, but you still have orgs that are sales cloud that are only 10 people. But if they're getting CPQ, if they're getting field service lightning, those types of clouds, it's always good to get those consultant certifications. So again, you get that domain knowledge, and then you can bring your business analysis skills and help with implementations or any sort of feature ads that they want to do. Now, as far as demand, like I said, I'm a big start with Sales Cloud, or if you're into marketing, I think Marketing Cloud's fine, but Sales Cloud is always kind of the bread and butter of Salesforce at the end of the day. I think it's a good one to have under your belt, at least when you're first starting out. But if you have some expertise somewhere else, like if you have transferable skills in marketing or service, by all means, go for it.
Yeah. So, for example, if you're somebody, I'll just make up a scenario. Let's imagine you're somebody who does pricing for a company, and there are some companies who, for example, I mean, I've worked in insurance companies, and their pricing models are based on some very, very heavy math that they have to do to figure out, hey, how do we price this product so that we can fulfill obligations, et cetera, remain profitable? Pricing on its own can be a massive domain. So if you're coming out of the pricing world, you want to leverage your pricing experience, possibly by looking at something like CPQ as your starting place, possibly.
Yeah. So you still want Sales Cloud, but you also want to kind of start moving into, okay, I'm going to be sales, but here's that little section of that sales cycle that I'm going to be an expert in and focus on CPQ. Or if you're going to be like an enterprise territory management person, like, okay, I'm going to focus on this part of thing. There are so many clouds in Salesforce. Salesforce, I know people just kind of think of the big brand, but there's so many products underneath it. And there are BAs needed for all of them. So I've seen people transitioning from healthcare careers that are now health cloud BAs. And so it could be by industry. It could be like by process, or a sales process, a service process, a marketing process. But think about where you add value based on your employment history. Who can you speak the same language as any of those end users, and can you leverage that in an interview? And that's also an area that you want to keep focusing on? Because if you're like, I hate health, forget it. Don't go into health cloud.
Understood. So the guidance there is you probably want some Sales Cloud, regardless of which way you go to, because it seems like this is probably kind of the core module.
For sure.
Or core set of modules, and then you possibly want to figure out which area you want to branch into, right? So if you want to get into the marketing world and the Sales Cloud functionality that does marketing isn't rich enough, Marketing Cloud may be the best place for you to go to, but Sales Cloud seems like it's the place to start. Hopefully that helps. Ravi says, thank you for your insights. You're very welcome, Ravi. And we are running very close to time here. Tana says, thank you. Most of my past experiences in nonprofit and community-based. This insight is very helpful. You're very, very welcome. Thank you for taking the time to join us. We're at about 45 minutes in, which to me, again, I feel like I've only been in 15 minutes because I could probably go on for another 2 hours. But let's do a quick summary. what I think we can do is we can park this conversation and possibly start it back up here again, because I mean I have a ton of follow-up questions. Summarize this. Every company, I think, has a set of functions that they need to perform, regardless of whether it's a one-person company and that one person's doing all of these things, or whether it is a 20,000 person company and they have a person or a whole team just doing this function here and another whole team just doing this, right? The template of what a company needs to do is more or less the same functions. You have to have revenue operations, which means you have to have a marketing function. You have to have a sales function. You have to oftentimes have a client customer management function. You also have to have, the people who are building and delivering the services, right? You can't just be all sales and not have a product or service to sell, right? But so you have another whole division in some companies where they do that. And then you have a lot of support functions oftentimes that you have to have just to keep these two other functioning company functions working properly. So out of business architecture view, these are some of the major divisions. There are other ones that we'll start to kind of layer on, possibly in like future conversations that we have. But for the time being, I think if you're looking at revenue operations, if you understand it really, that there's a marketing piece, there is a sales piece, and then there are, I think, probably a couple of different areas you could branch into to specialize, if depending on the area that you're interested in or the area that you have some history in. I think that's enough for you to kind of start to get started. And I think we said it was Trailhead is the website. So I'm just going to go to Google and say Trailhead, and that's all I did to get there. To go here and you sign up for an account, you're good to go. Now, in addition to doing this, I need to let folks know where they need to go first before I even go to Trailhead. All right, folks, I'm going to say that you need to make sure that.
Uh-oh.
And
there I am.
Yeah, Vanessa.ba. Yeah, I'm still getting used to running the live session with the software that we have. So I'll take us on and off.
That's great.
So connect with Vanessa. Vanessa.ba is the website that you want to go to. And here, I'll go to it right now. I'll say Vanessa.ba. You just type that in. You're going to see this. It gives you Vanessa's LinkedIn. It gives you Vanessa's Twitter account. And it gives you a place where you can sign up if you want to know what Vanessa's up to. Definitely sign up for that. I want to thank everybody for taking the time. And Vanessa, I want to thank you for taking this hour out of your busy schedule. I've already told the folks, I think the cat's out of the bag, that right after this, I'm going to start kind of trying to get you back onto another live session. So hopefully we can make that happen. But obviously, I don't want to put you on the spot for anything like that. I love
chatting with you anytime.
Oh, awesome. So one last question here is, how do we learn more about sales and services cloud best practices for a BA? I don't know who that LinkedIn user is. It doesn't show me, but I would say that if you show up to our live session, come back and ask us more of these types of questions. I'm going to be working to make sure that I can build at least really some visual graphical model that lets beginners understand where they need to start. And more importantly, I think that as a business architect and as a person who likes to really kind of architect an entire solution, I'm really interested in understanding how revenue operations connects to a lot of these other functions. And that's where I want to try to get us to in a future live session here. All right, folks. So we're over time. We'll leave it here. Thank you very much, folks. Make sure you connect with Vanessa I'm going to go to here. Still getting used to this. Connect with Vanessa at Vanessa.ba. And
cool.
I will hopefully we'll see you at a future live session. Thanks, everyone. Thank you very much, Vanessa.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care, everyone.